Today's episode is brought to you by elitefts.com. Founded in 1998 with the primary aim to live, learn, and pass on. Please help Elite FTS support this mission by smashing the like button, leaving a comment, sharing with a friend, and thinking of Elite FTS for your training needs. If you can put it in a gym bag or load weights on it, Elite FTS has it. Now, onto the show.
What's going on? I'm Dave Tate. We are broadcasting from the middle of the Elite FTS weight room, where the underground still thrives and you're part of the crew. It's time to sit down, keep it real, and cut the bullshit. Welcome to Table Talk. And we are live with episode number 114. Is that correct? I want to start off by thanking our sponsor for this episode, which is Marek Health, which is a premium healthcare platform. Marek Health offers two different tracks. One is self-servicing labs and one are guided optimization labs. You all know how important getting your regular labs checked is. I've personally been getting my labs regularly checked for the past decade on a quarterly basis, and am fortunate enough to work with Dr. Eric Serrano for that. Marek is a platform that, with these two different tracks, the one track is just self-service. You can go get your labs done, you get the lab report, look at it, decide, take it to your own doctor if that's what you want to do, go from there. Their other track is a guided track to where they will set you up with a healthcare practitioner who is attuned and expert in hormone optimization, and then they will tell you which labs they should get done, and then you get the labs done, and then they will review with you what is low, what's high, what's out of whack, what's not in whack, what you should do, and offer prescriptions or supplementation recommendations if needed. Head over to marekhealth.com and you can use the code TABLETALK for a 10% discount on your first order. And I believe that's only by the phone. So thank you, Marek Labs, for bringing Table Talk back for season 3. My guests today are JL Holdsworth and Douglas Heel. I don't have any pre-scripted notes, so we're just going to see where this is going to go. I had a session with Douglas last week, which I'm sure we will talk about, and JL's known you. How long have you guys been connected?
6 years, I think.
6 years now, know, so we have some obvious questions that people want to know, your background, where you come from, how it goes, which so we'll cover that first, and then we'll just kind of go from there. So who are you and how did you get started with BeActivated, or what led into BeActivated?
Well, I'm from Cape Town, South Africa, and one of the funny things growing up was that there was a lot of politics going on, so we had a lot of sanctions, South Africa was closed off to the world, and I think South Africans often think of that as a negative, but when you flip it, what it forms is independent thought. And so if you can't find an answer, if someone can't give you an answer, you've got to go looking for the answer. And so I think I just grew up always looking for answers, and started as a physical therapist or a physiotherapist, qualified as that, and immediately was like, you got to be kidding. This can't be it. And just kept going on a journey of there's got to be more. And, journeys don't always work out well, and sometimes bad things happen. And but if you keep learning, if you keep figuring out, what actually is going on, and my boy is 18 now, and actually I started teaching when he was 2 weeks old, and it was kind of crazy holding the little guy, and something said it's time. Mm-hmm. And it's like the universe almost opened up and said, cool, here's a teaching opportunity. Someone challenged me there going, how can I go back and work with my clients with what you just shared? Because it's just what I was doing in my practice, my answers. And following weekend, I ran a program for 10 Pilates trainers. Within 2 months, I'd run 10 programs, and people had asked better questions that I hadn't yet had, and things started moving. And it's a funny thing because, again, South Africa, I was thinking, cool, this is a nice South African thing. And then at some point, when I go in the world, everyone will go, oh, shit, I know what that is. And some of the guys from PT on the Net came out, Richard Boyd, Michelle Dolport, Dwyer, they were doing a presentation where I was doing training, because I also used to train personal trainers and fitness instructors for the Reebok Alliance. And so we met up, and they were like going, what the hell are you doing? And it just started that journey of like, but you guys are education. How do you not know this? And I was invited to come and just be part of some of the things they were doing. And over the years, I got to meet great people and all the leaders of the industry in their area. And everyone kept going, dude, what the hell are you doing? This is weird. And I think along the way, you start to figure out a language and a system. And so I always talk about at the start when I was doing all that teaching, so which is about 18 years of teaching. For the first 6 years, I was teaching you really cool technique, like stuff that you go, holy crap, how does that work? And oh, here we go. But when asking the question, but why does this work? Why does it work? Eventually, I was trying to describe that to one of my clients, a sportsman. And I was kind of going, well, it's like this. Imagine this is zone 1, and this is zone 2, and this is zone 3. And if this guy's in the priority, then this has to happen. But if it doesn't, someone has to take over. Now you get this, the whole system changes direction the way it works. And now we get the breakdown, the dysfunction. And I described what his one was. And a light bulb went on in his head. And now he understood every injury he'd ever had because of what I had just said, which meant I had to walk away and go, crap, what was it that I just said that made so much sense to him? Mm-hmm. And then I kind of put it into a little bit of a format, and I used it with my next client and my next client, my next client. And my clients were the full like from kids to grannies to elite athletes. And it probably took about 1.5 years, 2 years of figuring out the language. And now we call it the 1, 2, 3 philosophy, which drives BeActivated. So it went from a technique-driven system to being a philosophy, like a philosophy that drives the technique now. Because technique is easy. You can chop and change at any time. And every time I teach, people go, but that's not how you taught us last time. I go, yep. The technique can change the way we do it. The sequence and the philosophy doesn't change. But when you understand why your body's doing what it's doing, not it breaks down, this is the problem. No. Why is it doing that? And that's really what this does. The 1, 2, 3 allows us to do the deep dive into why my body is doing this. And like the engineers call it root cause analysis. So you become the irritating kid that keeps going, why? And then you answer and goes, why? And until you get to the bottom why, you haven't yet figured it out, which means whatever you do as your intervention is probably ineffective because you're chasing symptoms, you're chasing breakdowns rather than cause. And I think as I got better and better at seeing that picture, sharing that picture, because I've been, in 18 years, I travel the world and I teach all around the world. And I've been privileged because, like, from a South African base, it's hard to reach the world. But somehow I've worked with billionaires and presidents and top like best in the world. And I often look and go, don't know how that happened. It's just, but people who are looking for the edge have a magical way of finding you. And it's amazing what the body can do. And I think when we have the understanding of what our background software is doing, we bring a totally different way of looking at the body and looking at life, your whole life. And then we can implement things that have serious change. And so I'm very clear that when we do the right thing, the body responds immediately. If I do something with you and nothing changes, it's not, oh shit, I'm not good at what I do. What it is that just wasn't what your body wanted. And so when we can come from that kind of philosophy and that lens, it totally changes pretty much everything. And so the thing that draws me back is when I teach, I learn. And the kind of results that we see and the things that happen on the table and happen when people get off the table is kind of magical. And it's like it's a bit of a drug because it's like, holy shit, can you not see what's possible? And and 6 years ago, this little guy over here came because he was invited, didn't know what he was running into. And, you'd think he was the brick wall, but it was actually me. And stopped him in his tracks, gave him enough in that moment for him to shift his thinking and almost look at his world and his world of lifting and his world of everything and go, fuck it. In fact, there was a lot of that. Like no wonder it didn't work. Could it be this? So now we're asking better questions. We ask better questions, we get better answers. And so the journey began then for JL. And what's been awesome is just as you start to process the body, you put shit down, but you actually start performing at a higher level at what you do. And so the JL that I met had one strategy, and he will proudly tell you about the Hulk and the
You don't have to tell Dave.
yeah. So all of that mindset of smash, and that was the world. But for a while that can work, but the problem is your physiology gives you one strategy, and if I know you only have one strategy, I can beat you, because as long as I have more than one, and I can be half your size. And what was so cool is JL had a willingness to learn, and that's a big thing. So, and the minute he felt something in his body, and actually what the pivotal moment that I saw was he asked a question just outside of the workshop, and I think at lunch, I said, come, let's go into the squat rack, and no weight, just the bar. And I just changed the language, and he'd already learned the philosophy of how the body can fire. And I got him to do what he knew, and in fact, what he was an absolute expert in. And he did the movement, came up, came down, or came down, came up, I suppose. And and was like, no, that's not possible. That's not what that movement feels like. I was like, well, maybe that's what it should feel like. And it was that different and that much easier, and that much of the struggle in his body in a basic movement was no longer there, and it was just changing the philosophy of how we thought about movement. And that same philosophy is the thing that drives the breakdown, the dysfunction, robs us of our strength and our power and our flexibility, endurance, speed, balance, coordination, all of those things. But now if I'm diminished in those things, now I take that human being into my world. So I'm diminished. Like I always say, that what you are in one place, you are in every place. And so so we don't care where we meet you at. If it's in the weight room, cool. How do we help you be better? If I'm a surfer, I like to surf. Sometimes I'm a good surfer. Sometimes I'm a really shitty surfer, but I'm still a surfer. Mm-hmm. But the idea is that when we find an answer here, we realize how it can translate into every component of our world. And I don't want that to be airy-fairy. So, like, oh, that's vague, that's snake oil, no, we like measures, so we take a measure, we do an intervention, we remeasure. And I don't care if the measure is a strength test, a flexibility test. I don't care if we're taking your heart rate variability and checking that, doing an intervention, checking your heart rate variability. I'm interested in change, and I'm interested in that idea of when we do the right thing, the body responds immediately. And so if you are doing stuff and nothing changes, it just ain't the right thing. And sometimes it's the thinking behind what you're doing. It's that the order's wrong. You're not in the order the body requires. And so the 1, 2, 3 is about sequence. And if my sequence is in a better place, the game changes, in my mind, in my world, and that's the fun thing.
So with the philosophy, because there's a lot of different protocols, I would say, that kind of stem from applied kinesiology,
for sure,
muscle test.
Absolutely.
So I don't want to name them all out, but there's several of them out there, and there's some people that. How's your philosophy different than? I don't want to use their names, but how's your philosophy different than some of those other
systems?
Yes. Systems.
I would say because we can simplify. And the philosophy is the body has 2 survival priorities: got to breathe, got to move. And here, the big part of that is that if those are our survival priorities, and we can agree, it's kind of like your body has a contract with you. My contract with you is to keep you alive. So let's say you feel like shit. Your arms are broken, your legs are broken, everything hurts. Which kind of sounds a little familiar looking at you, but could that be you over there?
Just a little bit, yeah.
And you go, why would this happen? Well, and you go to your body and you say, hey man, why are you doing this to me? The body says, did you read the contract? And you're like, what contract? My contract says, are you alive, yes or no? My contract is about survival. And you go, well, sure, I'm alive. Then shut the hell up. it says that's not my problem. That's your problem. And so because the body has set up survival strategies, compensations in your body in order to help you function and survive, it has sacrificed all of these things that make us lose our strength, make us lose our function, create pain and dysfunction, creates inflammation in the joints, creates you name it. And obviously in the last 2 or 3 years, we've seen how much external pressures put on people. So there's way more other stuff going on now. Now suddenly you have like really a real strong, powerful athlete who suddenly is feeling mentally fragile that they didn't have before, but it's this uncontrolled pressure. But it's all in the body. The body, the brain is reading what the body's doing. And so if you don't know what you're doing, then you're just going to keep doing it, and you're almost going to get better at your survival system. But your survival system is not your thriving system. It's not your effectiveness system. So if we can address and constantly be asking the question, what is the body doing? And why is the body doing? And what does it need? So imagine, we'll do this hypothetical scenario. So imagine, Dave, that you drove your life from your jaw.
Mm-hmm. Imagine
Can you imagine that?
Well, yes. I'll put this out there. I'm completely open with you discussing anything that we did. Okay, so that's fine.
So basically, when we assessed you, we had a conversation about what your body's doing, and there were a few ideas and theories that I was saying, and then I said, but let's put you on the table. Let's see what your body says, because I always want to match the story, the symptoms, to what we find on the table. Otherwise, we have a problem. And in a sense, in the medical model, that's matching your signs and your symptoms.
Yes.
And if the two don't make sense, then we're just like taking a shot in the dark and hoping to hell it works. And before I had the philosophy, it definitely felt like there was more of that. So when it worked, geez, it was amazing, and there were like miracles happening in the room. Without it, when it didn't work, I didn't know why it didn't work. And I didn't like that. So the question had to be, well, where's the pattern? And so imagine that in the idea of breathing and movement, your movement system requires hip flexion. And hip flexion is your psoas. And imagine that I one day, for whatever reason, magically came and turned off your psoas. And now the body says, shit, I can't move. And now that it can't move, it has a choice. I stay here and I die, or I find a strategy of movement. And it starts looking, and the question goes out, hey guys, how do we do this? And so the abs and the quad put up its hand and say, hey, we have to change our function. And this is really, really important. We have to change our function. You know, in that anatomy textbook that says, this is what the quad does, this is what the abs do. They go, we're going to sacrifice that function in order to do hip flexion, because hip flexion is a higher priority. And so they shorten, tighten, drive inwards. What happens in the front happens in the back. So the hammy and the erector spinae, also, they start to be the glute. And so suddenly, there's your new system. But let's say that doesn't work. This is where it gets interesting, because, cool, there are people with that pattern, and we get, we have a number system. It's pretty simple, because it's only 3 numbers, 1, 2, 3. Yeah. But yet it can get complex quickly, because within that quad ab pattern, you get a 2, 2, 3 and a 2, 3, 3. Now, we won't go there except to know that someone is a 2, 2, 3, which would mean that's why there's constantly cruciate tears and surgery. And if you're still running the same pattern, you get the same outcome, because the risk profile is always there. And so when we can bring an understanding on why your body's doing what it's doing, then then the way you approach the problem changes. So imagine now the abs and the quad don't work, and the body again is stuck in this place. I can't move. If I can't move, I'm going to die. And then it says, who else can help? And the tibialis, and I always when I teach, I always make people take their finger and stick it on their shin and go, and this guy over down there says, I'll be your hip flexor. And I can just see the blank, because the tibialis it doesn't touch the hip. It doesn't do anything. At least my quad crosses the hip a little bit. That would make sense. But and the tibialis goes, hey guys, hey quad, hey abs, you're now with me, but you're under me. And when I tell you we're going to move the hip, I fire first, you guys drive the movement, and then we can function. Here's what's so interesting about this. In order to do that, the tibialis has to shorten, tighten, drive upwards. So now it can't do its own job. In fact, it's also doing the quad's job and then doing a very bad version of its own. Same thing's happening with the calf. Your calf or your calf, got to get that accent right, your calf is now being your butt. And so what that means is now you've got diminished movement at the ankle, which means you're at risk of ankle injuries. And the reason why this is acceptable is because the hip flexion and movement is a higher priority. And so the body is always willing to sacrifice. Now, here's the irony. There are all the breakdowns and dysfunctions in the ankle that comes with that pattern. But if I said to you, so tell me about the opposite shoulder, what's that doing? And you go, you didn't talk about that. I said, yeah, now imagine I didn't talk about you, suddenly you didn't exist. So what ends up happening in a pattern like that, you get a shoulder instability. And so someone wondering why their ankle is screwed up and they have an unstable shoulder on the other side, I always like to say, it's on page 12 in the level 1 manual. It's for us, when we understand the background philosophy and how the software is working, this becomes an obvious correlation. They are not two separate things, but when you treat them as separate things, now we're in trouble. But let's say now we keep tracking along and we say, oh no, tibialis can't do it either. And now again, the body's in this shit, what do I do? And so now, opposite arm, that one that with the previous pattern would be unstable, it goes, hang on. I'm going to shorten, tighten, and drive downwards, lock my hand, lock my elbow, the shoulder, whatever, drive down. Everything in the leg has to drive up in order to do hip flexion, because that's the priority. Remember, it's always about the priority. Why is the body, what's the body thinking about? Not what does the cleverness of Doug want it to do, what does the body want to do? Because if we can figure that out, then we can address that. And so the arm now shortens, tightens, drives down, leg driving up. Think about if you were that pattern, an arm driver, every time you lifted a heavy weight, which in this environment happens a shitload, that would mean the primary drive of the movement is my arm has to shorten, tighten, and drive downwards. Look at the long lever anyway, which is driving down into my spine. So if I've got that pattern happening, but only on one side, what's going to happen is in my lower back, discs are going to prolapse that way. The sacrum is going to go out that way. The hip is going to get labral dysfunction that way because there's so much pressure coming down. It's got to go somewhere. Whereas if I were running an arm pattern on both sides and they were symmetrical, I would actually just collapse the system down without the jumping out. And so now I've got pancake discs. So it's not like, oh, it goes this way or goes that way. You look at your MRI or your X-ray and you've just got the narrowing discs. And, I've got one of those and I can tell you that, I popped a jumping castle, fell 4 meters down onto my coccyx, and that's why that's there. And actually I know that's partially true, but the pattern that I was running actually allowed that to happen. But that's the arm. Let's say the arm doesn't work. There's a zone 3 at the top has another one, which is a little more familiar to you, which is the jaw. So now imagine the jaw, the masseter, the temporalis, and a little bit of the sternocleido. They are shortening, tightening, driving down in order to do the hip function. And so look what they've got to sacrifice and how long a lever that we should actually, I almost hope that someone listening is just going, what a load of bullshit. Dave, you've let me down. How can you let these fucking idiots come and talk shit?
I think though, if you're talking about the patterns though, there's a couple of things that come to mind, because when I first started, 6 years ago, I'm listening to this. It was just like you said. Okay, I hear you, I get this, but when you're talking about, the tib is this and the jaw is that, I'm like, well, fuck this guy, man, because the fucking jaw is the jaw. It doesn't do anything on the hip. I had to change my whole thinking to, he's not talking about the actual muscle. He's talking about what's neurologically driving the action. And that was the craziest part for me where, and I know probably a lot of people come from the same background I do where, I took my anatomy and physiology class, and physiology is like, oh yeah, this is up here. It doesn't do anything at the hip. Well, from a muscle standpoint, of course not. From a neurological standpoint,
therefore movement, therefore movement, because the brain doesn't think neurological; it just thinks move. I need to move. What have I got? What have I got available? And you've seen it in lifters that you challenge them in a pattern. You can almost. Can we go in your story?
Yes, 100%.
Okay, so because your story is pretty profound because You were something until 12 years old, and you came up against a resistance. You went into the gym.
Douglas, real quick, I think one thing that I think brings us, because this really frames the story, is that Dave originally asked, right, what makes BeActivated different?
Yeah, I'm going to get there.
Well, what I'm going to say, this story is the perfect example. BeActivated, the system, the philosophy, allows you to understand the causes of what's going on so you can address them. Whereas every other system I've ever worked with, had worked on me, understood, is all about addressing the symptoms. And if you address the symptoms, they just keep coming back, where another one pops up.
And sometimes when you address the symptoms, you do create a management of your pain, your dysfunction. Very seldom do we overcome it. It just goes into various levels. I have an elbow problem that once it's had enough work, the elbow's better, but my wrist is now fucked.
Yes.
And so all it's done is it's just shifted its focus, but you're still an arm driver. So in that moment at 12 years old, when a body that was shut down and didn't have an effective strategy was loaded with weight, your system in that moment found your jaw bilaterally. It locked down and it went, holy shit, I can do this. And your words were, and then suddenly I could find it and I could push through. And it's pretty much the picture I have. It's like, you went from not being there in your life, and then suddenly you were there. And the language that you used was pretty damn profound, because I don't even know what one's allowed to say, but what I heard you say is you were a retard.
Yes.
Until you were 12, and in that moment you lifted the weight, you were not a retard. And what was so interesting?
Well, that's what I was labeled. That's what I was called.
No, absolutely. But what was really interesting is I was really impressed by how many times you told me long before we'd got you on the table that you were an intelligent guy. And so that's why I even had to check in on you and go, I just want to check that you said retard, because you're saying one thing. In fact, you are reinforcing that idea. Don't worry, I'm an intelligent guy. Go there. And so imagine that in that moment of pushing that weight, your brain found a way to do hip flexion, to expand and push the weight, and it was the jaw. And what we have to say is, holy shit, that's amazing, because that switched on your world. So you found a strategy in order to do hip flexion that happened to come from your jaw bilaterally, and it allowed you to do some remarkable things, to lift some very big weights, to switch on your system. And in fact, what I found fascinating, and switch on your brain. It's almost like when that weight was dropped, you were a different human being on so many levels, because your system had found a strategy. And why this is important, because imagine your jaw didn't kick in. Then you have no strategy. And the no strategy is an important one, because it's become the most common pattern we see now. The no strategy is a zero. And the zero is a fatigued, overwhelmed body, post-traumatic stress, all of the things that we're seeing. So with the overwhelm and the craziness of the world at the moment, we're seeing bodies, physiological systems completely overwhelmed. That's playing out in physiology, and therefore it's playing out in our function and our behavior, where that sense of helplessness and disconnect, and all of those are survival mechanisms, because the body has not found an effective way to do hip flexion. So I just want to throw that one in. But what's really important is, so we want to celebrate what your body managed to achieve, because it saved you and it actually brought you into this world, and we would not be sitting here today if it weren't for that moment.
100%.
Your achievements and your searching wouldn't have happened without that moment. But as we know, there's a cost. And so survival strategies are there to help you survive. The problem is, if we keep running that same pattern at some point, because things are short and tight and driving downwards, there's a cost. The cost comes in that. And so because it's such a high, long lever, and with the training, there's so much extra added pressure on it. That means there's almost no part of your body that escapes the imploded state, the driving in state. And that's pretty much what you'd said when you came in. Everything hurts. there's not a joint in my body that doesn't have pain, dysfunction. It's always there. It's a noise. It's never not there.
Yeah.
And the thing is, and I think what's important for people who are listening is, I don't know where you're at now. So we did a session 7 days ago. We haven't checked in to say, hey, how are you, at least is this going to be a good thing? Are you going to sneak up and go, by the way, everything we did was bullshit? I don't know. But what was interesting was when we did the testing and suddenly you go, okay, so you're saying that this is driving my function. And then you take a step back and you go, what does that mean to you? And you had a list of questions that you had of your body. Why does my body do this? Why do I do that? But that suddenly had a way more meaning and answers that actually they were all the same thing. Because then you were like, well, actually for lifting, I've got this special bite plate that because I was crushing my teeth and I was doing this and changing that, and so there's your lift. So you had an adaptation because you were destroying your teeth in your lift. Yes, you're lifting from your jaw. And then we had the conversation of, well, if you're going to go teach, now you're going to teach based upon what you feel. And so your body had adaptations with this movement. So it changed movement in order to let you be successful. You were successful, tick. Then you would, and you said, I can't quite remember that. It's interesting because in the squat or whatever the lift was, the instruction is this. But I do it that way and I instruct it that way. And then you go, well, why do you have to be difficult? Well, you have to be difficult because you're describing how your body does it through your 3-3-3 jaw bilaterally, which is the only way you can be successful. That if you did the other way, you couldn't do the lift, which sounds kind of cryptic. So do you want to unpack that, or Jael can unpack that?
I know. So the thing, it's interesting. So obviously, a lot of people who have been on the site or maybe they're new to the site, 6 years ago, I go learn BeActivated from Douglas. I call Dave from the airport. And I go, dude, I got some stuff that I think really is going to help you. Dave didn't ask what it was. He just goes, well, when are you back? And so, Dave comes back, and I think this is, to box a lot of what Douglas said, because it's so much information. I'm listening to him, and I understood every single bit of what he said. But then I think about JL 6 years ago, none of what he just said made any sense to me 6 years ago. So if people are watching, there's like, trust me, it took me a while to get it too. And I think the coolest part about BeActivated is I went through that first clinic. I didn't understand the philosophy really. I mean, I kind of had a general concept, right? We come back and work together. You said I spent 2 hours. I didn't understand what I was doing at the time.
Obviously.
Yeah,
you literally had the Hulk working on you because he wasn't not the Hulk at that stage. He had no feel. He was in smash mode.
Of course he didn't. It was like a torture, 2 hours of torture. But anyhow, go ahead.
But that was the thing. I didn't know what I was doing at that point. To me, it was just, hey, I just got to do this in this order. I didn't know what I was doing. And yet you go set a 90-pound squat PR that night.
Yeah.
And, same thing. I had a coach go through level 1 this last weekend. He works with a client who does triathlons. She comes in. He's just getting ready. Just went through 2 days. Level 1. He works on her for a little bit before they train. She goes for the same training run she's always done. Same route, same pace. Her heart rate's normally 168 to 171. And she's done it, 30, whatever, I don't know how many times. She sends back her heart rate data, same run, same pace, same route. Her heart rate was 131. She dropped almost 40 beats a minute on the same run, same pace. He doesn't know what he's doing. I didn't know what I was doing when you squatted 90 pounds, right? But that was the cool part, was all I did, right? You remember I was going through my notes. I mean, at that point I'm going, okay, so then I'm supposed to do this. All right, what am I supposed to do next? And I think the coolest part about all this is you can be very successful with people just following the system right away. However, this weekend or this past, that was my 5th clinic, and it's about 10 hours a day. So at this point,
We did 45 hours in 4 days.
Yeah, it's a lot, right? So I've probably done, we'll just say 200 hours in clinics, not to mention a ton of talking with Douglas.
It's far harder just to spend time talking to me. We hack much more.
And so I've spent all this time, and I got 1 million pieces out of this last clinic that I hadn't seen. And that's what's amazing to me about this is someone who just goes through it can make, you said a 90-pound squat PR, your body feels better. We kept working, kept doing. However, the power in this isn't about rubbing this spot or that spot. It really is the sequence, but more than that, it is how, just what Douglas did, where you can extrapolate and say, okay, kind of what we found where, you know, when you went to West Side, they'd be like, look up, look up. Well, if neurologically this is where your stability is, you're like, screw that, I'm not looking up.
Yeah, you can't look up because then this, in order for this to function, has to shorten, tighten, to drive downwards. Now you're saying, look up, and you're going, I can't do that because that lengthens this. Now my cheat, my compensation can't do its job. I can't function.
Yeah, and that's what, to me, the coolest part about this is you can be successful because it's a system and the sequence. If you're like we were, man, I was, hold on, dude.
Yeah.
And you can be really successful with that as you learn and get deeper, understanding that piece of, okay, that pattern that's running in your body, how you and I do our lifts. Well, now we both know because we've had lots of conversations. But yeah, that's how we do life too, right?
Yeah. What you do in one place, you do in every place, which is kind of important. Because I said to you I was going to drop something of an insight.
Well, and I think too, what's cool is that, you know, the level at which we've done this. You can't. I don't know anybody who's done any sport or activity at a super high level who doesn't have great awareness. And you know, Dave, we've had conversations like lifting definitely saved my life. So you definitely had the awareness of, and obviously anybody who knows you for sure had the awareness of the effect it had, right? Yeah. But because of his, obviously he created the piece, the system, the philosophy, he started explaining to me the story I already knew that you've told me and the effect. But once Douglas started going deeper, I'm like, oh, now I actually get the cause of why that did that for Dave. And I know now you do, as well. Yeah. But I think for people listening, I think it's very hard to really get to that. But the base thing that people don't really have to understand, or, you know, they don't have to understand it to get it, is when you understand the cause, not just the effect, now we can change it because we have the cause of it, or we can make it better. And if you want to mess with people, you can make it worse for them too.
Oh, yes, exactly. You have a gift though. It's a different gift, because when he was working on me, I mean, he did tell me, you know, look, JL probably would have found all this, but it might take 5-10 sessions. Other people. So,
I'm sure I said 5-10 years.
Yeah,
he's a little slow.
And he's aware of that. He's aware of that when he's, you know, teaching other people how to do that. And I've had hundreds of practitioners over my life, and there's like 3 that I can think of that that's why I said I was so confused, right? That have this, I don't want to sound like quirky on, you know, but they have this gift, right, that you can't really explain, you know, and that was because you, like, within a half hour, it's like,
well, they can't explain within the paradigms that we have right now. So
yes.
if you say, this is how we think, here's the box. Yes, within that box, this doesn't make sense. And when you sit from the outside and you look at it, you go, that's got to be bullshit. Yeah. But when you start to get it and track it, so I almost was teaching you a new language on how to interpret yourself. That's what the philosophy is. And as you do that, things change. But just go with where you were, because
it's that's what was going to be the question that I have for you, is that's a blessed gift that you have for whatever unknown reason, right? Yeah. I mean, he would find certain things on me, and his arms had goosebumps on it. Like, what the hell's that? You know, like, how does this happen? You know, and I had massage therapist in Barbados one time, so it just freaked me all out. And there was something going on there. Big. My shoulder was moving full range of motion, and it's locked up. How? You know, you don't know. There's just some unknown special gift. How are you going to be able to? That part I get. You know, you're not going to be able to teach that. But how do you then take the pieces of that system to be able to teach somebody like JL to be able to get there? Because most people are going to understand, they're not going to see this big difference.
Well, the thing is that what JL and you did on day one, that would be considered normal. So that if you and I had worked, we might have got to a very different place but I have a diagram that I use where we call it dropping down the staircase. And dropping down the staircase is all about the autonomic nervous system and where your body's at. And so if you have an event, so if we take you, the 12-year-old, doing your first lift ever, for a very long time, every time you've looked at that, you've told the story the same way, it looks the same, it feels the same, it's a very pivotal moment in your life. But because we dropped your physiology into a different place, and because we gave it a different way to interpret that event, I have a funny feeling now when you look at you as the 12-year-old doing that, the way your system sees that story and gathers that information, interprets that information is different.
Yes.
And because of that, you're now empowered to do different questions. And one of the things that for me was probably the part that I most wanted feedback on, that I had to like hold myself back, was pizza night. Because pizza night was going back to your family. And when we pitch up different, what that does. And so for me, lifting more weight is great. Wonderful. I'm so happy for you. Not going to change the world. If we want to change the world, when you lift more weight, your system does something different, and you take that back into your world. And so you're a better version of yourself when you pitch up in the world around you. And so in that understanding of ourselves, sometimes it takes that pressure cooker off, and you can almost feel your system just go, oh, that's why I'm doing that. Because we had a lady on the workshop who, at one point, as something released and she found her strength, and she's like, 7 fucking years, the medical people have been telling me it's all in my head. For years, they were looking for the answer. They did everything because they couldn't find the answer. In their box, she did not fit. Therefore, it's her fault. It's in her head. We don't have the answer. I wish they could just have gone, we don't have the answer, we don't know. But they took that and put a judgment on it. So for 7 years, she's lived the anger of it's all in my head. It's my fault. When I have pain, it's my fault. That's a different interpretation. And I know so many people out there, because I work around the world, and that's how we're interpreting. And you know, we are meaning-making machines. And so when we have a pain and then we have a judgment on that's all my fault, geez, that has meaning. So my pain can diminish me even more. But if I have pain, my meaning-making machine, the first thing it does, it goes, why is that happening? What am I fucking up? What am I missing? And when I get really stuck in my pain, there's a little part of me that smiles that says, I bet I'm going to learn something really cool that I'm going to be able to take to the world, because I'm going to have a better story, a piece of information. I'm missing something. And so I don't ever claim to have the answer. I'm willing to look for answers, and you will have heard even how I communicate with you. And I wasn't going, Dave, you're this. Mm-hmm. I said, when I test you, this is what comes up. What I feel is this. So I'm doing it through Doug. Mm-hmm. And the big piece is the reason I can get there quickly is because I'm always doing my work. And so, not always. Sometimes I want to run away and drink tequila. Actually, quite often. But but it's when we drop down that staircase of the autonomic nervous system, we see more, we feel more. You know, systems open up. You stand up, the room looks different, it feels different. Your body, you know, we were talking about, imagine that background noise of pain and dysfunction sitting in your body, that was 50 units. You're allowed 100 units of energy every hour. And 50 of yours are, before you've even started, are allocated to the noise, the pain, the collapse in your system. That only allows you 50 units to function in. Now you're already limited even before you got out of bed. And so as we bring understanding and then bring the right techniques to help the system, we start to quieten the noise. And I didn't say, hey, let's grab back that 50 units. I said, wouldn't it be cool if you only needed 20 units for the pain and the noise? Because now you've gotten access to another 30. Because, let's not be stupid. We're not going, oh, we're going to, there we go, it's all gone, your life's perfect.
Yeah. And you're not going to add an additional 30.
It's kind of, but if you've got, suddenly you've got 30 units extra when you start out in the morning, that already makes life different. Because and how do you deal with stress? Well, when I've got 50 units, I'm limited in my capacity to react or respond. If I've got 80, well, I've got more capacity to react and respond, so I've got more resilience within the world. Because the one thing that the world of training knows is, like, you can go and do the most amazing lift today, and tomorrow when you want to come and do it again, or the day after and you want to do it better, usually that's the biggest fuck up. Because you haven't understood what are the factors driving your system that could be disrupting you. And so there's the highs and the lows, and we do a whole lot of things with messing with stimulus, and we make it simple. I get people jumping. I go, okay, jump, there's your baseline. And then I throw a whole lot of different stimulus at them. I change words, change the order I say things. I ask them to think about things. And you watch how sometimes someone can't even get off the ground, and they're like, it really pisses them off, by the way, because it's like I'm sitting at the front of the room pretty damn smug, but I'm letting them see how unaware we are about how the external stimulus is playing out. And so, see this amazing space that we're in, Jael? I want to tell you a story about this amazing space, because we walked in here. I said, wow, this is amazing. It's quite busy. And Jael says, yeah, you used to have a smaller gym, and then you got this huge, beautiful space, and magically you then managed to fill it a lot with a lot of stuff. And I smiled. I went, sounds like a 333 jaw who lifts, who's driving down, whose space is tight, and there's no space to move. That's what your body was doing. No wonder you feel so safe here, because this is an outward expression of your inner world up until 7 days ago. And I said it would be rather interesting if you've walked into this space in the last 7 days and gone, shit, this is looking a little busy. Maybe I need to get rid of a bit of stuff.
I'm not going to answer that.
Yeah, that would be a little.
But I did. I mean, because somebody was in there the other day, and I'm like, man, there's a lot of shit in here. And I'm the person like, we can always fit. I can fit more.
We've had this this is the whole piece of cause and symptom. We've had that. You and I've had this conversation.
So you go, but it's just so my jaw is driving my hip, and yet how I set up my space is different. Oh yeah. Correct. And we can extract it, and we can do that, and we can go really deep, or we can, and that's cool. So now we're having a bit of fun, because walking in here, I was like, oh, I can see this. But your system didn't have a choice but to do this, because you've created your safe space so you can bring yourself to the world, and you do a damn good job doing it. Whereas if we had this amazing table and we just cleared the space, we go in the middle of the desert, you're going to be, look, you're also like, fuck no, that ain't going to happen. No. And that's the jaw driver that holds, controls. But as your system unlocked, because we did some breathing, we got the zone 1, and amazing as the zone 1 started kicking, as in we helped the body do what it was meant to do in the right sequence and order, suddenly this started letting go. It wasn't like, cool, now we know what this is, let's go punch it and smash it and get it to release. Because here's a little bit of a problem that happens in the world. There's some amazing work happening, and people doing things with fascia and releasing things, and if you hold this and move it, it'll release. And nobody's asked the question, why is the body doing it in the first place? And this is my big concern in the world. If you don't know why something's doing what it's doing, leave it the fuck alone. And when you understand why it's doing it, now go and address what's missing. Don't take away the cheat. Because let's say I'm an arm driver and now I've got tennis elbow and I've got pain and dysfunction. Did you know, if you're listening to this, if you have tennis elbow, you have diminished range in your opposite hip, in rotation. And until you address that, your elbow won't change. And if you don't understand that, and if your therapist doesn't understand it, no matter what their intent is, because I think the big deal is, and like this is the first time I sound a little pissed off.
Yeah.
Because I get not pissed off, but frustrated with what I was taught. The university I studied at was a good university. It's a great degree. There were mostly great people teaching. There were a few idiots, but they were the ones who saw me as the bad apple. I was the disruptive one who asked the questions they didn't have the answer to, and they didn't like that. So I ended up, my strategy was I did a lot of surfing while I was studying, as in didn't pitch up for lectures because I wasn't learning anything. But it's like, come on, there's got to be more. And as a reaching out to therapists and chiros and doctors who are doing stuff, and they're really good at what they've been trained in, and they're frustrated because they know there should be better results. You then start thinking it's you. I am not good enough. No, maybe the philosophy, the box that we've been given isn't the right box. There's a better box that can have everything in this box in there, but there's more, and the way we look at it is different. And then suddenly we can have effect, because the body is a remarkable, remarkable thing. It changes so damn quickly. And, you know, I remember once doing a demo before, I think it was the Puma Marathon in Cape Town, and I was asked to do a demo at the expo, and had some lady on the table, her hamstrings were 50 degrees on each side, and there were about 60 people watching around the table. And I looked and I was like, this is interesting. She's got one tiny, tiny little piece missing, but she's an ex-dancer. So if she's an ex-dancer, her standard flexibility should be 180 degrees. But if you didn't see that she was an ex-dancer, you wouldn't know that. So 50 degrees for a guy would be like, no, that's pretty good. Mm-hmm. And I'm going, yeah, I've got to get at least 90. I say that to my grandmothers too. We need at least 90. That's the minimum functional rate. And I did a little flick, which now we'd say would be the glutes. And she, within 5 seconds, went from 50 to 180. And my audience of 60 magically turned into 20 because people ran for the fucking hills. That was scary. And I was like, what did I do wrong? And 5 years later, I'm at a business program, and at the end talking to the lecturer, and this guy comes up and goes, "You're Douglas Heel." I said, "Yes, I am." He said, "You have given me nightmares for 5 years." I said, "I don't even know who you are. You know, as long as we've done." He goes, and he tells me about that day. He said, "When you did that, you freaked the fuck out of everything that I knew. I've had nightmares about you ever since." That plays out. I've almost had therapy. And I knew that it meant that I needed to come to you because of my pain and dysfunction. And he did, and he sorted it out, and it was quite simple. But what he was seeing within the paradigm that he had was impossible. It was extreme in mine, so it's extreme for me, but in his it was impossible. And now he's in this conflict with how the hell did you pull that illusion magical trick? So this is my world. So I've literally ended up having a world where I come in, I do, I leave. You know, and when people go, "Oh, you made that happen," I go, "No, I was a piece of it," because I can't make my client so we can do a great session. You can get new insights in different ways, and I can say, "This is what I think, where we're going, and what you're doing." You can walk out and go, "Fuck you, I'm not going to do it." Guess what? Then nothing happens. No, you do the same thing, you get the same result. Awesome. So I'm a great believer in it's your responsibility. So I do so much talking, because I do, so that you are learning more about yourself. So I'm an educator and a facilitator long before I'm a healer, because the challenge with the world in the way we interpret healing is I heal you. I heal no one. I help them understand their stories. I help your body understand its orientation, where it is in space and time. And when it starts to know itself better, it changes its perspective, it changes the way it functions, and in the easy answer, it lets go of pain and dysfunction. It gets stronger, gets faster, gets more powerful, more resilient, has more endurance, da 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 da. And so all of these things are manageable things. But if we say, but that doesn't fit in the box, the answer is correct. And so people like, dude, if you know, your business could be huge, you could be doing this, and yet you seem to spend your life surfing. You go to my website, you see me standing with my surfboard at a great surf break called Thermopylae, where I'd had a surf, and because the fact that this is quite powerful and it could be significant, it's also a big, quite overwhelming for me sometimes, and it's quite a big responsibility. And so, like, I'm full of shit. I tell bad jokes. I
can concur with that.
You know, and there's definitely always one person in the room laughing, and that'll be me. But part of that is because this is a big deal, and if we get too serious about it, we'd go, actually, there's a bit of a crisis because the box ain't working. And I don't want to fight with the box. I want to invite the box to a different place to say, how do we take what you've got and make it more useful? You know, it's like, I don't want to say to jail, squatting is bad, don't do it. It's like squatting is great, but do it right. Mm-hmm. When we can get it right, that changes the game. You're not in that box anymore, I promise you. And so my sense is that if a 1, 2, 3 body is an expanded system, it should be able to act upon the world around us, not the other way around. But that means that when we exercise and move, every time we finish, we should feel expanded, lighter, easier. If I'm not, then in my mind, it's just Doug thinking, then I'm doing something wrong, because my sequence is collapsing rather than expanding. And I can see it in the surf. When I've had a great surf and I've stayed in balance, haven't over fatigued myself, haven't got smashed myself on the reef or something silly, I get out the water and I'm like, I'm relaxed, but I'm like, what am I going to do next? Whereas there are days where I get out and I'm just like, and I sit in my car and I'm tired and I'm broken, and it was great and it was hard and it was a struggle, and that's got value too. But my systems collapse, and I can always tell you that somewhere along the way I couldn't hold my sequence, I couldn't hold myself there. And it's cool, you know. In my world, I'm an arm driver for my left hip, so my right arm drives my left hip when I break down into dysfunction, and I'm a 3-3-3 leg on the right when I break down in dysfunction. And so the cool thing is, I don't say that I'm a 1, 2, 3 my whole life. That's bullshit. Anyone who thinks that's like going, I found enlightenment and nothing will ever touch that. So it's kind of like the goal is to be a 1, 2, 3 more often, and when you're not, to catch yourself and to be able to take yourself back there. And then in my world, to then keep testing it, pushing it. Just how far can I take this before I slip back into my default where my body says, this isn't safe. We need to help you survive. And when we do our work, it's really easy to help other people do it too. Mm-hmm. That's it. You know, pain and suffering is just part of the game. And sometimes the biggest athletes, the biggest, scariest athletes that I've had, you know, you can take like a pinky and go, hey, dude, what's this? Because of the imploded system, there's so much locked in that tissue that little pinky reaches it. It's like reaching deep into your psyche and into your brain. And it's weird. I can go, can you hear your brain screaming? Yep. Well, that's a survival mechanism. When it's just painful, that's not a survival mechanism. That's just painful tissue. But with the coaching goes, can you separate the screaming brain from the feeling of the finger? And the minute the brain can do that, it's almost like you go, oh, I'm not dying. Yeah, I wonder why your body thought you were dying. It was a pink little finger or a little thumb. And that's because these are the brain patterns and what's been set up in our brain and our body for the times when we weren't safe. It's all there, and we're playing off them, and we're running off that same craziness over and over.
Well, I think it's funny, you know, because Dave, you talked about how Douglas has this skill set, and there's a lot of it you can't teach, right? And so it's funny because he's talking about putting a pinky, and I can 100% say it's not about him pushing hard or doing anything. It's literally just he knows, and his skill set, I do believe, the way I think about it is...
Well, what he knows is where that magic point is by that. That's all it is. Where that, so imagine that in your pattern, each pattern has a way of collapsing it, which we spoke about. I don't do that work anymore because it's brutal. There are people out. It's so friggin' easy to break people. There's enough of that. That's not the world we live in. But But in a treatment session, a healing environment, what we want to do is we want to find those breaking points in a safe space. So I just want to give you a different context for the day you guys, and this is important because you don't know where I'm going. When you first had him work with you, so one of the things we talk about is safe spaces. So the irony, although the Hulk was pummeling you 6 years ago, you have an existing relationship, you feel safe, which is why he said, I've got this, you said, let's do it. So you were already safe, okay, to do the work.
Yeah.
Now, if you weren't safe, let's say we went out into the field and put a table on the field and we did the same thing. You would probably have a very different outcome because your system wouldn't have been comfortable to start with. But you had a far more important thing, is you're in a respect relationship. And so when I do sessions, people often wonder, like, sometimes I can say hello for like a couple of minutes and we get on the table, and sometimes 40 minutes in we're still talking, because until I've found that place where we meet and we can figure stuff out and you are safe enough to be on the table, because this is all autonomic nervous system, I'm going to fight with you if we have, and I've done that. I've like years of doing this work. I've been doing it for 22 years. I've fought with many of my clients, almost instilling my will upon their body. But you know what? When we don't have to do that and we find a place where we meet, geez, it's easy to go there because the body is safe enough to do the work. Otherwise, I'm just another reason it has to lock down and stay in survival mode. And I know I've got clients out there who think I'm the devil because if I look back, I didn't make them safe.
Well, I think about it like the bench press. I mean, everybody knows you lay down and push, right? So you and I had the same coaching at Westside, right?
Yeah.
We got the same instruction, we got this, but I benched a lot more than you.
Yeah.
So I had a natural ability that was just higher. It doesn't matter how much instruction you and I got or how much time we spent on it. My ability to bench press was just naturally really high. That's how I think about it with Douglas, is that, okay, anybody can come into the clinic, and whether they have a natural ability of a 500-pound bench press, a 100-pound bench press, the instruction in the system is going to make better. Just like when someone comes in here with bench press, it doesn't matter where they start, you're going to make them better.
Yeah.
But a grown man with a 300-pound bench press ain't bench pressing, 900 pounds.
Yeah.
And so that's how I think about it with Douglas and BeActivated, is like.
So you do know that he could have outbenched you? No. Gentlemen, this is just a conversation. I think he could have, but you guys are answering from inside your box. So what I would have done is I would have put a little pillow under your head, shortened your units there to allow your zone, your cheat to be more effective. Because in the bench press, it's too open. It would change. So let's say he wouldn't beat yours, but he could certainly have competed at a way high level.
Yeah, he would have done more for sure.
But if you don't know, so I could have done the opposite, and I could have asked you to take a head further back, and something which was an easy lift would have killed you.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's the fun part when we start to understand why the system does it that way. It's that if you don't understand, like the table that I was working on, I said to you, great treatment table, but I'm using everyone the wrong way around because the place where you put your head is influencing the physiology too much, so the testing changes.
When you teach the bench, so obviously I've trained with you a lot. When you're teaching and I'm in a shirt and I'm touching, you always teach, look where the bar touches.
Well, now it depends on the person.
Well, but think about this, like if you're here more, you're going to teach more in this position than keeping the head back.
Yeah.
But this is the funny part of what Douglas is talking about is, you're going to stay here because this is where you're strong. Whereas someone else, if they don't go there, they might not get the benefit.
Yeah.
And so that's what I think is really cool with this, is understanding the causes, is the way that you're going to coach the squat or the bench or whatever it is going to be based on your cheat patterns and how you get better. Like Doug's is talking about, if he would have utilized your cheat patterns, then you would have bench pressed more. And I think that that's the cool part about it, is you understand the causes, you start to see, oh shit, I'm coaching people to do it this way. But now that I understand their pattern, that actually makes them worse at this. And right now, it's like you see, and this is where I think great coaching is amazing. You don't have to understand, and I've studied this a lot. great coaches. I've been around a million times. And we talk about this. People come in who have, whatever, exercise physiology degrees, and they watch something, they're like, no, this is supposed to be this. And, you walk up, or I walk up, and it's just like, no, they need to do it like this. Well, we might not understand, we don't.
Well, you have a huge database of life experience in which you can then look at the world differently.
See, I would agree with what you're saying up to maybe a decade ago, but once I was out of the environment that I was training in for so long, because we all did everything exactly the same way. Then I started seeing that there are lifters that are excelling at all different ways. Then it's like, okay, there's different ways to do this. So my default teaching would obviously be where the bias is. And it's like, okay, this isn't working. Let's try this. So yes, there are some people that with the squat, it's going to be drive the head back, lock the jaw. It's going to other people I don't have to say that with, or sometimes it's, eyes up, it's finding that head position that works. So the bench is the same way.
Yep.
I always had to watch the bar. Now I know why, right?
Yeah.
Now,
but now you see with the coaching, this is why you know that you have to actually find that right position for them.
Yes.
The question, and so what that means is your eye had already figured out the different positions to make it optimal for that person.
Yes.
If they were not a 1, 2, 3, what you were doing is you were helping them optimize their compensation pattern.
Exactly.
So within the system that
that's what I'm probably still doing. 100%.
Oh no, 100%. And the thing is that if someone comes to me and they want to get from here to here, and I find that changing their head position or locking this down or helps them get from there to there, well, I've been successful. So why wouldn't you do that? And that falls in that box. Nothing wrong with it. They've got it. You've got it. We're successful. At some point, when they want to go beyond that, and then you're going, fuck, we can't find a way. And and so each compensation pattern has how much it can give you, and plus your personal drive and your motivation and your willing, because that's also a big part of it.
100%, yeah.
But your compensation can only go so far before it breaks. And that also means that your output, your possibility, your potential is also limited. And so when we start to bring the pattern of expansion into the system, suddenly it starts to go, hang on. So this, within this realm, this box, this is what's possible, but we're not in that box anymore. This ain't Kansas anymore.
Yeah.
Dorothy. So it doesn't mean that I'm saying I know the answer, because I'm very happy not to know answers. I'm always, the last time in Columbus, I was with Spud and Susan and the gang. We were talking about, what happens if we do a workshop and we see just how crazy the weights are when Doug's cueing and Doug's talking breathing, and totally let this go while we open that. And I don't know what the answer would be. And someone said, but what if someone gets hurt under a heavy weight? Well, guess what happens in powerlifting? It's a
I taught on this
extra badge, But what if? Because I know that I have athletes out there that the most important piece of feedback they give me, they can give me this feedback, and I know something good's going to happen. They go, Doug, I've just figured out my breathing. I've got it. My breathing is independent of my movement. They'll go set a world record. They'll go be within their realm of their 500 pounds or whatever. They will go and break through stuff, because that's what happens. Because in my mind, in my thinking, in my philosophy, breathing is independent of movement. If my diaphragm is firing, it's firing the psoas. It's actually fueling it, which is fueling the glute, which is expanding the system, which means now I've got space to move, but I've got endurance. I can overcome. I can feel different. But my system doesn't collapse in and do this and narrow down in order to function. It actually opens up. And, I think it was about 2010. I'm name dropping just so it sounds like, because I was at the Bears Club with Jack Nicklaus at his son's house for 2 days, and we were doing some work, and we were talking about that. And I was like, I really get annoyed that the coaching out there is to focus in, block this, because I think that's bullshit, because that's a survival state. What an autonomic state says, if I can open and I can see everything, now I'm safe. So if I now, with that, can choose to focus on you, I can do it from a place of safety. And we were having that conversation. And he goes, that's what I've been telling everyone forever. And they always go, no, the science says that. And I say, so what do you say? He just says, well, when I get annoyed with people and we have this argument, I just say, so how many masters have you won?
Yes, yes.
I want to listen to him. I want to know what he does. And it's a fascinating thing. You know, it's the 1, 2, 3. I think I'm in my name dropping mode now, so I'm going to do this because I want people to understand that. So I don't even know what year, 2007 or 2008. Miami Dolphins played 16, 1-1, and somehow within the network that I was working, it was actually an argument with a very powerful man who told me I will never, ever work with him again. But because of that, he respected me and he opened a doorway so I went walking into the Miami Dolphins. So it's a fascinating thing how we get there. But in order to demonstrate to them the possibility, I'd gone. They wanted to meet me. I just got someone on the table, Ronnie, whatever, had torn cruciate, 6 months in, still couldn't train. Explained to them the mechanism. We did the work. Before I'd even left Miami, they were already going, he's back training. How's that? And how do we get you back? But in order to teach the 1, 2, 3, one of the guys that I used was a 6'11" Samoan lineman. You see, I don't know the game at all, but he was big and 365 pounds. And so I said, well, I'm going to tell you what his pattern is, and I'm going to tell you how I'm going to beat it. And there's me standing in front of this man mountain. And so I put my hands on his chest and I go, okay, dude, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to push you over. I'm going to knock you over. And it's my favorite part is when someone looks at me like, you are a stupid little bug.
Yeah.
And of course, obviously, in my world, this is obvious. In this box, it's impossible. I knock him over. But I'm now about to play his physiology. As he falls over, I'm like, I'm so sorry, you weren't ready. Now, actually, I'm hacking him. I'm making it easier the next time round because now I'm pissing him off. He's going to go to his strategy more. I'm using a hand position that doesn't allow his strategy. So we do it again. This time I go, all right, you ready? 1, 2, 3, hold. And same thing happens. And then I turn around and say, so where's my contract? I want to be a player too now. No one's offering me a contract. It's now I better be a teacher then. So we've got about 20 of his players watching. And I say, what we're going to do now is I'm going to do it in slow motion, which is way worse. The only thing I have to make sure of is my sequence is in the right space, and then there's nothing he can do. And literally I'm like, boom, this is where zone 1 should have kicked in. Did you see that his body, instead of going this way, went that way? Everyone's like, yeah. And he's like, okay, this is level, this is zone 2. Oh shit, he didn't have that. Now it's like he's literally, this big man is standing on the edge of the table going like this. I go, sorry buddy, got to complete, boop, and down he goes. So obviously then we do the work. We can reconnect his system, get it activated, and then we get 3 of his players running into him. So, because if I go and stand and push, it's like, oh yeah, Doug, you're just not pushing so hard, you big scary man. And he's standing there going, but I didn't have to do anything. I'm like, exactly. That's the point. When the system is doing the right thing, it knows how to find itself. So imagine a system, you found yourself in your jaw. A lot of people's systems right now are so disorientated, they can't find themselves. His suddenly could find himself, his strength, his power. And I just remember when we were leaving that day, he came up behind me in this huge, massive arm on my shoulder. Hey, Doug, man, that was great. Thank you. But I'm like, and that's when I'm not in my teaching mode, and I suddenly realize how freaking ridiculous this must appear, because this man is well over double my weight, and he could just sit on me and I'd be squashed. But that's why it's outside of the box, and that's why it seems crazy and seems weird, and a lot of times it's easier for people to just pretend it's not there, and sometimes that's why I just choose to stay home and go surfing, because it's way more fun and less effort to have to deal with the fact, no, that's bullshit. And so it's a fun game, but the thing is that, we're in, this works with everybody, because as long as you need to breathe and move, then we want to optimize that, and we want to put it in the best place possible. And we may not get it perfect, but we sure as hell can get you better.
Yeah.
And the thing is that when I say get you better, that means you and me journey together. It's like you were not passive in our session. Yeah. I'm asking, you're engaging, hold here, do this. Now what do you think? How are we going to do this? What do you think? Because it's your process. And the thing is that when it's your process, when shit's going down and no one's there to help you, you've got the knowledge and you've got the ability. So you can imagine your athlete, something goes wrong on the field, and they know that they can bring themselves back. If they can't, they're ready to get injured. And so it really becomes cool because two amazing docs, Tom and Eric, they work at, they help out the Nazareth high school football team. And they've done some amazing, amazing things with those kids. And they have put it really into the training, into the system. And so the first thing that we know is that all the injury rates dropped significantly. And it was interesting because I was like, wow, that's amazing. Are they winning anything yet? And they were like, no, this is to Tom. This is many years ago. And I go, so where's the breathing? Bet you it's not in there. He's like, oh, we got so caught up in hitting points, we forgot the breathing. They found a way to integrate it into their training, and suddenly they were state champions, and suddenly there was this happening. So the kids were staying on the field, they were safer, and they then started getting results, which is kind of how the game has to work. You've got to be safe in your physiology first in order to perform. This is something people don't seem to miss. But in talking to Eric recently, what is the most amazing thing that also happens now? On game day, a kid gets smashed, gets hurt. And when they come to the side, they get them breathing, they get their zone 1, and they figure out how real the injury is or not. Because the system's in this shock state, of it's got disorientated and overwhelmed. And so they bring the system back into balance. And they were saying like, 60% of the kids are back on the field later because it was the system in shock. And the ones that are real injuries, they know immediately, so they manage it as that. And that's a totally different way of considering what's going on. And I smile because at my boys' school, when the little junior kids, they start playing rugby, first contact's a big deal. You know, some kid who's wrestles with his big brother suddenly runs into you and smashes you to pieces. So Mrs. Lucas, who was the head of rugby, was like, have you got something for us? We've watched you do weird and wacky things. So she approached, a lot of people go, whoa, weird and wacky, run away. And so we set up stuff. And literally what she does, when there's a little kid down and they're crying, bawling their eyes out, she'll run up. And when she checks in with them, the first thing she does, she puts her hand on their chest and just slowly rubs, which is the activation for the diaphragm. It's very non-specific what she's doing. And she said, been doing this 20 years. You know, you've got almost the whole field stops. The dads help with coaching, but everyone's like, while this kid's screaming. And she said it's the craziest thing. 9 times out of 10, she does this and the kid goes, okay, all better, and jumps up. And everyone's like, okay, what just happened? But that 1 out of 10 isn't actually injured. And so now we're also helping with on game day, on the battlefield. We're actually figuring out what's real and what's not real. Because remember that the body is always, my job is to help you survive. And if it's misinterpreting the information that's happening, it may take you out of the game, believing that's what's going to keep you safe. And so when we reset the system, it gets the opportunity to go, nah, I'm actually good. I'm ready to go in. And other times you're going, actually, I need to step away. And so it's helping coaches and managers and the medical in these environments understand what's real and what's not real, that we're not overreacting. And so we're finding that the kids are safer and therefore they can perform better. You know, you stay on the field, you perform as a team. So, it's there's so many areas. The irony is this principle always goes back to got to breathe, got to move, willing to sacrifice anything in order to do those things to keep you alive, nothing else. And it always comes back to that. And then the question is, what does the body need in order to change those things? And if we can find that and figure it out, then it will change. And as long as we've got measurables, we'll know that's happening. And once we do that, we can integrate it into how you live, how you train, how you work as you choose to. And then suddenly you create this resilient system that has a new level of function in the world. Let's say 3 months from now, like you and I meet again, and then it's like you're going, Doug, I got that information. Body's definitely feeling different. I'm on 20 units, goes to that, and I've got the 80. My jaw's completely different. But what else is there? Well, there's always more, because there's this magical little staircase called your autonomic system, which we track down. And I don't know how far down I am, but I know that all of that falls into the realm of what we don't know that we don't know. So it's all that stuff that's outside of the box that we can't even define yet. But once we find it, and the neural system, once it finds it, then it goes, oh shit, now I know what I know that I don't know. Now I can learn it. Now I'll find a coach who can help me with that, and then I'll get better. So we want to stack the system, and we want to get good at it, or find our new place, and then build on that. So that's the next layer and the next layer, and that's what we do on the table. Like in our sessions, the biggest part is we do. Let's say it's a diaphragm activation. Get you breathing. Now get up, have a walk. And they're like, yeah, I'm wasting time. No. Watch what happens when you start walking. Now you've got gravity, ground reaction force, momentum, all of these things. The body starts to figure out who it is and what it is now that it's standing. And one of the great human beings in the world for me is a guy called Gary Gray. You guys might know him in the world of functional training. And I did some stuff with him, and what a wonderful, wonderful man. And his first course was when the foot hits the ground, everything changes. Correcto mundo. And so to have something happen on the table, sweet, happy for you. Get it, how many times like, okay, Dave, let's get you up. Let's have you walk. What's going on? What are you feeling? And it's also weird, because it's what are you feeling, not what do you think or how is your pain, or what are you feeling? Because that is an autonomic question. And it's a funny concept, but the only part of your neural system that can answer what are you feeling is your parasympathetic state, your healing, resting, recovery state, which in my world is your performance state. So your high-end freaked out is not your state. You're welcome to go there, but you've got to come out of it. But that's the only part that can answer how I'm feeling. And so giving you the chance. And sometimes you get up and you don't know what you're feeling. And so what? So I don't know what I'm feeling. It's different. But now we're engaging a different part of your neural system, which then can operate in the world differently. It interprets the data that comes in every second of every day differently, because it's the software. So it's kind of like your computer's open and you're wondering why it's going slow. So you're thinking, shit, I just need a new computer. And then you go to your tech guy, and the tech guy says, hey, Dave, I don't know if you noticed, but you've got 20 programs running that maybe if we just close 10 of them, your computer's going to function better. And you start closing those 10 and you go, oh shit, I didn't have a problem after all. Your neural system and your body is doing the same thing. It keeps running these programs that are long, long gone. They're taking up space. They're taking up RAM. They distract you from what's right in front of you. And then all you have is that pattern, that history to run off. And if we can reset the system and let it find a different way, it most of the time does.
I think, to me, and this is the big piece, all of those pieces really are, it's symptom versus cause. So all the other treatment that I've had, when I'm on the table, I feel pretty good. When I get up and I start walking, shit comes unraveled. So by the time I get in my car, drive home and get out of my car, I'm like, okay, well, I felt better while I was walking in my car, and now I'm still pretty much in the same spot. The cool part that I've experienced with BeActivated is I'm on the table and I'm like, okay, I feel a little different. And then I get up and start walking, and then I feel better. And then as my system settles in and I'm moving around, it keeps feeling better and better. And that, to me, was one of the pieces that I didn't necessarily understand, but I really liked it, because anytime I'd go do other things, when I got off the table and started walking, I'd feel worse. And that's where that was the whole thing to me is, when you treat a symptom, like every day coming to the compound, I kick you in the nuts in the front. You walk to the back, someone has you a bag of ice for your nuts. It's going to make your nuts feel better, for sure. But why don't we figure out why the fuck your nuts are hurting every time you walk in the gym? Yeah. Stop JL from kicking you in them. Address the cause, the problem goes away. Address the symptom.
Yeah, choose your friends better.
Yeah.
Yes. So what you've taken pieces, small pieces of this to create the RPR.
Yeah.
So what is the difference between that for the people that would be listening?
Yeah, I mean, I think
I'll give you my take. So basically, RPR is designed that you do it yourself. So in my world, it's self-activation. I put together a program in about 2005 that once I'd worked with my clients, then they'd get a CD-ROM, which was that, what is that, PowerPoint producer, video PowerPoint, and here's the thing, an explanation of what you're doing. And so the thing is that we still want to reach people. And if you are connecting your system yourself, you get yourself on the journey. You can make that difference. And it's kind of like, if I get someone doing it, they will feel better. They will find more strength, things like that. But there is something about your neural system having something to come up against, to see and reflect. And so what happens with that is the neural system, you only know where you are in your neural system because of where you just were. So it's just like the pilot in the plane is constantly checking, because you're going to be blown off course, and bringing yourself back. And so that's why we have a before and intervention after. Because and that's one of the things that when the guys first started, they picked up a whole lot of stuff and ran with it, and they're good kids, these three. But sometimes you get a bit excited and you miss something, and like I had to say, remember, you have to have a baseline. If you're just going to rub spots, your system goes, oh, that's nice, and a few days later you're not going to do it. But if you stand up and sit down, rub a spot, stand up and sit down again, and it's different, your brain goes, holy shit, that's what it does. And if you go, well, next week I'm not going to do the sit down, stand up, then your brain goes, I don't even know if it's working, because my sit to stand now is going to be different to my sit to stand tomorrow. And so everything is about helping the system orientate. So when we put that in, that made a difference, because there's more motivation when you can actually feel that difference. But doing stuff for yourself is, I kind of want to go a little dirty on this, but I'm not going to. But touching yourself has great value, and many of us have survived by doing that. But sometimes we want to go a little deeper and do more and get beyond. And I think that sometimes the biggest value people have had is by connecting in with themselves and finding answers themselves. And if that's what you need and if that's what you want, sweet. But it's knowing that there's more, and that the way the BeActivated flows is we do the work on the table, we integrate it into your life, and then we get you self-activating or RPRing, whereas RPR is just flowing the other direction. The goal would be that if it tweaks something in you, if it helps your team, if it helps your family, you're going, but I haven't broken through. I'm way better. I can feel a difference. And I think that's the amazing thing. The physiology responds immediately. And some of the stories that these guys are getting is quite remarkable. And, that's the point. And that's why, the jail pretty much pulled the two of them together and said, do you even know what this is? And the funny thing, that was the Hulk jail that was doing that. And as he's journeyed, he and I, we talk a lot, and through this lockdown and all the craziness, and it's constantly going, are we doing this the best way possible? And that's the goal. That's why we're doing these trips, because people often take snapshots on what they think I'm doing and what I'm teaching. And so you through that lens of where you are right now, you interpret what's there. And, I have people that they've done 10 level ones. And you kind of go, dude, are you that stupid? And it's like, nope. Every time I come, it looks like the same. It's not the same. The sequence is the same, but what I learn is different. And so is that because I teach it differently? Yes. But is it also because you are now in a different place? You're stacked in a different place. So each time there's another layer or another version of yourself. So you see the room differently. You interpret the information differently. And it's kind of crazy on a workshop, because I can teach something and we can go to each individual and say, what was the piece that you took from that? And if you all wrote it down on a piece of paper, you'd think they're all at like some weird rave festival or something, because none of it makes sense. They don't sound like they're describing the same event. But you pick up in your compensation and the way your physiology drives, that which your point of focus of survival is. So the pieces of information that get picked up, and it's the most fascinating thing to watch in teaching. But the more you do the work, the more you open up. The next time you go look at the same thing, it's totally different. Now you interpret it differently, hear it differently, and take it out differently.
So obviously I come from a different lens, so I think about it a lot differently. And the way I think about it in simplest terms is RPR, and why we created it this way, and why I went to Douglas and was like, hey, like, I have this idea. Because I went back to the spot and I got my staff together, you know, had the huge result. I'm like, oh God. And I started doing stuff. It's like, I can't have my, you know, 25-year-old strength coach doing stuff with it. Plus, it's just not what we do, right? We don't do
you can't.
table work, right?
No, you want to. But you also want to finish that sentence, because what's really important is you don't want a 25-year-old trainer working on a young girl on her sternum because
in a closed room.
So that therefore from both a business perspective and from the two individuals is unsafe. Therefore, you're never going to get the results of the work.
But I think the big thing though is that I would even go a distinction between RPR and self-activations, and the reason is this: RPR is really just about the points. So when a new client comes in at the spot, they can look at the RPR wake-up drill poster, and they pretty much know how to do RPR. BeActivated is about the system and the philosophy. And so that's why I say self-activation is even different, because by the time they get there, they've already been taken through the philosophy.
Differently. You're hitting the same spot, but you're doing it differently.
Because your understanding is completely different. So to me, that's really was the biggest difference, is that, you know, RPR it's that entry point, right? So look, you look at the poster, you know how to do it, you're going to feel better. Awesome. With BeActivated, like I said, man, this is 6 years, tons of conversations, tons of clinics. I'm still learning more about the philosophy, and not even necessarily more, just deeper, right? Because the philosophy is simple. Simple isn't easy. And so that's the piece, is that for me, RPR is about the points. Do it yourself. Look at the poster. You got it.
But the big part is people feel different.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. So you go hit those spots. You feel different. We're winning. You know, because that's the goal of the game. It's that we actually have an effect on your system to make it move and train better and feel better. And so it doesn't matter which way you're coming in from. But I think what we find from RPR is there are, let's say 50% of the people that do it go, cool, thanks. The other 50 go, this is cool. I want to know more. And that's and so I'm a very, very clear on, you know, when we sat down, I said, why are you here? You're like, because JL said I must. That's not a good enough reason. That's how you got through the door, but let's have a look. And I want my clients to do their work. I don't do your work for you. I did a Meeting the Minds, like a TED Talk in London with FitPro. And somewhere in there, I apparently threw in something about firing your clients. And people took offense, like, but we are here to help people. Yes, I'm here to help people who want to help themselves. And then I'll help you find the answers. I don't do the work for you. Mm-hmm. And why that's important is I have burnt out. I have broken down. I had 3 practices. They were closed and I was broken because I was doing everyone's work. I was sorting you out. You just had to lie there and, you know, but the problem was that when shit went wrong, now you needed me. That's a burden. That's and so I'm very clear. If you're not willing to do your work, it's okay. We might go for a beer. It's not a judgment against you. If you're not ready to do the work, don't do the work. But I'm not going to entertain people. And it's sometimes a challenge with the environments I used to work in. When you're working with billionaires, who when you kind of challenge them and they go, "Is it about the money? Do you want me to pay you more money?" It's like, it's not the money. But 12 years ago, I would sometimes let them dictate the rules of how the session would work. Well, I'm not the one like creating the space anymore, and so that's what was so cool to get to Miami Dolphins is the gentleman that I was working with that weekend. I said, you need to do this. He said, I'm not going to do that. I said, then it ain't going to work. So now we have to agree to disagree. He took me into the golf locker room, chased everyone out and screamed and shouted at me, and I did the same. And in fact, we did a showdown in the 4 days because Jael and I couldn't find a meeting place. But instead of us either one going, oh, it's a workshop, we did it. We were with everyone. It's if you're true to yourself, don't back down. Doesn't mean you have to fight with anyone. You know, good old days, I would have had a fist in my face about 3 seconds in, but you know, it's beautiful because, but you've got to want to do your work. I want people who are curious, who like, I want to know more about me. Help me that.
Well, I think that too. You know, there's so obviously on Wake Up Joe Poster we have the point, but I mean, the amount of points and the amount of information that had to be chopped out, right? And so there's just so much more. So like I do RPR several times a day, right? But for me, because I understand everything, the way I do it's different, right? So it's in that philosophy piece, I'm doing the self-activations because I understand my patterns. However, my body always feels better. However, coming home after day 1 of the level 1 clinic and the days after, I was super present with my family. I read my son's stories every single night, which never happens. I was able to work on you know, I was coloring with my daughter and then stop and read my son a story and come back. So that's the big piece to me is that, you know, when you really get in and having someone else work with you, and then now you add in all these other aspects, not just the philosophy, but they're working on you. You're doing a ton of more points because, you know, we got into a place and we got into some techniques that Douglas teaches in BeActivated on, honestly, it was day 4. And I got off the table and I didn't really feel that much change on the table. And I start walking and like my world changed, like just everything all of a sudden, like my breathing opened up. I felt so much more relaxed. And then, you know, I mean, I went home and Douglas was there. I
can't get rid of me.
I bought dinner. I cooked dinner. I helped clean up dinner, like all this stuff that like I never do. But because, and again, that's part of it, right? Is like, that was day 4, but that was, you know, there were so many, and if people want to look at techniques and points and all that, it's almost endless with what Douglas teaches. Like you just keep going. So it's just deeper. And it's like, yeah, every time I do, you know, self-activation, my body feels better. But when someone else works on me who understands that philosophy, where I get, like Douglas talks about the staircase, it's like, great, I do it myself, I drop down, I feel better. But then when BeActivated work on me down, it's like, woof, and I'm way down here and I'm able to do things I'm not usually.
And just on an interesting thing, so then when he goes back and he does his RPR, woof, down here, now he's meeting that new version of himself there to keep him there. You know, because
that's a big part.
I don't want him to have that window and then I go, oh, how's that going next week? And he goes, well, yeah, gone. And that's the same for you. Is that we want to open up that experience. And one of the questions that the clients ask a lot is like the session's over, they feel fucking amazing, and there's that moment of how long will this last? So what I do is I do scenarios. I go, scenario number 1, 10 minutes from now, you get in your car, it's all gone. And they're like, oh, really? I go, no. At least you have one thing. You know what you can possibly feel. It means your body can. We've got to figure out how to keep it there. They're like, oh, okay. So now we've actually addressed that scenario. Number 2, you wake up tomorrow and it's 60% there. And your where you are is pretty damn good. It's far better than you were before. Now we've got to figure out what is the gap and how do we keep you there. Number 3, far scarier for most people, it doesn't go away. Okay, who the fuck am I in the world if I have no reason to shut down, lock down, close? I have to actually look at my world and nothing's the same. So actually there's a lot more work to do. So you almost want a bit of shutdown because it's less work at the end.
Yeah.
But those are the scenarios. And so we're not going, we do this and woohoo, your world is forever and ever. You know, that's not how I want to live because that's boring as shit. Because then it would be, here's the magic water bottle, you know, Doug peed in here. So there's magic voo in there.
I'm not drinking it.
No, It's a facial balm. But it's like it is the most amazing thing watching people do their work. And sometimes the work is completely, what's in the mind is in the body, what's in the body is in the mind. It's your story is written in your fucking physiology. And so people often think I'm a little bit psychic, and I'm not. I'm just quite intuitive on how I read bodies, and I can tell you how I get there. It's not, I don't want it to be like magic and mystery. It's because it's there. Hey, look what's happening in your body. You said this, your body's doing that. This is what it most likely means. And you go, yeah, you can't know that. I'm going, you gave me that, you gave me this. As long as my autonomic nervous system is open, I can see more. And like one of the Springbok rugby players, Fourie de Pre, what year would that have been? Whenever they beat the All Blacks, when the All Blacks are looking for the world record number of wins, we did some stuff with him, and I can't even remember what it was. And he stood up and he goes, Doug, I can see what's going on behind me. I like, sure, you can. He goes, no, I can see what's going on behind me. I'm like, yeah, you're really funny. No, he's a conservative, wonderful man, but I'm like, stop bullshitting. And he pretty much could see what was going on behind him. So we could say, yeah, that's weird, Doug. But then you go and watch the rugby player he's the scrum half, who actually didn't lift his head up because he didn't have to look to see where everyone was. So as he came up, he was already passing the ball. So the pace of ball movement was faster than anyone else. He was that year South African Player of the Year. And like when I was flying up to Joburg to work with one of my Olympic swimmers, and he'd asked to see me, and I'm like, okay, what are we doing today? He's like, dude, I'm just here to say thank you, which by the way, in the world of athletics doesn't happen often. This is what's quite iconic. They kind of go, yep, that was me. I did it all by myself. And we all know that shit. And I've got to tell you, it sucks. I've had medical teams in a country that I come from go on strike because of me in a sport that I love. And why? Because they won. And they didn't like that Doug was there. And that sucks. And it's like at some point, I go through the phase where I actually want to say to everyone, would you mind just fucking off? I don't care. I'd much rather the people that I see as Matt's friends, and if they have a problem, or people that I care about. But coming and traveling.
This sounds really familiar because this is like conversation. I don't want to freaking work with these people, this and that. But then young kids who come in here, they're local, like who just want to learn and do stuff. And you're like, yeah, let's do it. And now you're working with those guys forever. But then lifters who people would know, like, I want to do this. Like, no, they're not going to listen. They're going to do this. So it's funny just listening to this from a perspective of like, it's the same type of conversation. It's the same type of conversation.
But it's also weird in the world of sport, because the minute someone sees competitive advantage, they don't want to share it, because they want to look good. And so I think somewhere in the good old days, I actually thought going into sport was a great way to market. And I discovered really quickly that it wasn't. And just like with the billionaires, the minute I want to share, they go, do you need more money to not? It's kind of like, how much does it cost for you not to share this? It's like, that's a bad question to be asking. And the thing is that I'm going to share like one of my little weird things is actually I want to share something very different about Miami Dolphins. So must have been about 2016. I was one of the guys I was doing stuff with had got a hold of the speakers out and whatever their theme was, and there was this physical therapist from New York, awesome guy, great speaker, this black dude, and Greg says, hey, meet so and so, here's Doug, and Doug does this. And this guy worked with one of the NFL sides or does stuff. And he goes, you're him. And I'm like, I'm what? He goes, you're him. See, I love biases and physiology and biases, and you love this. I go, I don't know. You worked with the Miami Dolphins in 2008. I said, yeah. He said, people are looking for you. I said, I'm not that difficult to find. It's a rumor. He goes, but they're never going to find you. What they know is a guy came into the Miami Dolphins, a whole lot of shit changed, and then he went back to Africa. so you got to be black. They're looking for a black guy. And this is a black guy telling me. And we just literally are hugging each other, laughing. He goes, that's ridiculous. Literally, I've had conversations about, have you heard of this guy? But the Google search is limited. So imagine that's your survival system. And it's hilarious, because I always go, if you only knew how easy this game was, it's like, why aren't they beating down the door? Because that would be silly, but it's the funniest thing. But at the same time,
well, because it does, it looks like magic. It does. It looks like magic. And I think it takes a long time. Like everything you said, like it's easy, it's this and this. It's simple. It's not.
Don't point at me and say it's simple.
It's simple. It's not easy.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is that because you have the symptom, or the system, you can break it down and say, this is why this, and this. But to anybody who doesn't know it, like it looks like magic. And so I think it's hard, right? Magic is what? Science people don't understand yet. And so now that I've been with you and spent as much time, like a lot of things that I used to see you do that I was like, there's no way someone can do that. Now I look at it and I'm like, oh, well, this and then this and then this.
Yeah, it's kind of, that makes sense. Whereas
before I was just
2 years ago, he's like, dude, what the hell?
It's just voodoo.
Yeah.
And now it just makes sense, because I'm like, oh, well, now that I understand the system and the philosophy better, that totally makes sense. And so I think that's one of the parts that I think are hard for people, like you said, like, but within that, I 100% agree with what you said earlier. Like, he does have whatever you call, like a skill set. Like, he's coming in with 1,000-pound bench.
He said gift.
Yeah.
Skill set.
But it is, whatever. Like, but it is a gift. Like, I didn't do anything special to have a huge bench. I could just bench it, like I laid down.
Well, I mean, a lot of people are given a gift, but it's what you do with it.
It's what you do, right?
The difference.
Okay, so now imagine that your jaw-driving pattern is a gift, because now anyone who has that, you can have a different conversation because you've got a different perspective, because you've stepped out and can look back. And now, understanding that, you can help people through the journey with the way you did it, as in, don't throw everything away, use the stuff that you've got, and the stuff that didn't work, you can explain why it didn't work and the shitty consequence that comes out of it. So the gift of the struggle is probably the coolest thing, because literally the greatest learnings I have are all my fuck-ups.
Well, I think that's true with everybody, if they actually embrace that.
If you're willing to do the work and do the learning.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because what do you learn from success? If you seriously think about it, what did you learn? A lot of times sometimes it just stumbles across from luck, right?
Yeah.
Or connections or whatever it was, but you don't really learn anything. And anybody that's reached a high level in almost anything has had way more mistakes than successes.
For sure.
There's far more strikeouts than there are home runs. It's just life, right? And to think that works any other way is a big misconception. Are you guys doing more clinics while he's still here?
Yeah,
well,
so
we're heading to San Diego.
Later today. We're leaving for San Diego, so we'll be out there. Level 1 is this Saturday, and then Sunday, so 2-day level 1, and then 2-day level 2. So the 14th, 15th, we're in San Diego, level 1, and then 16th, 17th for level 2. So there's still some room. We're doing it at David Weck's place. And so the clinic stuff, if people are interested in coming to the level 1 or level 2 or both, it's on the spotathletics.com. And then it's /BeActivated or B-activated, but it's right on our website. So there's still time to sign up for that. So if people are in San Diego, I think, I made a post about it yesterday. I mean, this is the most, by far and away, the most life-changing whatever. I don't even know. Life-changing thing to come into my life. I mean, I can't explain. I mean, because you know me forever, but for me, it's not just, I mean, yes, I would have had to have a knee replacement by now. That's great that I haven't had to because I have this knowledge. But more is like, there's so much, like you talk about, like you change this pattern, more opens up. So the conversations I can have with anybody, with you, with my kids, like that's the piece to me is like, it's not, the kind of the way I'll wrap it up is my sister saw so much change in me, who I was as a person, that she was like, well, what is this stuff? And I'm like, BeActivated, Douglas. So it's weird how the universe works. She randomly finds a lady she lives in Europe and is close enough, and she goes and gets worked on and has BeActivated sessions. Like, oh man, I'm not really sure. I feel different. So Douglas is coming over there to do a clinic. So she signs up for the 2-day clinic, calls me like, I have to stay for the next 2 days. She goes to a 4-day clinic. Her whole world starts to change. Now she's done another 4-day clinic, and she's a mom. So like she's not in fitness. She doesn't have any background in this. So for me, it's cool what I can help clients with this, but the changes for myself, like those have been the biggest things. And that's what's really cool is like, you don't have my sister, right? She doesn't have any background in this, but it's still making massive changes in what she does and how she's living and all those pieces. Her body feels better. She had some injuries too. Weird. We kind of work the same. And so I think that's one of the coolest pieces is, yes, if you're a practitioner, if you're a massager or whatever, strength, like if you work with other people in this field, it's going to make massive changes, but not just in their body, like how you understand, like, well, why does Dave, this used to look nice and organized and now it's filled. Like, why is that happening? And so to me, the changes personally outweigh, and I've helped some people in huge ways with this, but the changes personally. So that's what's cool is like, it doesn't matter if you're in this or not, because it's not about this point, that technique. It really is about learning a philosophy, and it's a philosophy and a system with some techniques and points.
Yeah.
And so that's what I think is really cool.
All right, as I close this down, let's say we're in an elevator. So give me the elevator pitch on what BeActivated is.
Oh, geez. That's the biggest challenge I've ever had. And Ben, the young guy he was talking about, he gave me a lift home the other night, and he came up with something, and I'm still going to chase him down because it's the perfect elevator pitch, because I couldn't have come up with that. But a simple thing would be, your body's amazing. When we find the right things, it'll respond immediately. So if you're in places where you think you can be more, do more, or don't like where you're at, we could probably find a place in your system and help you change it.
That works.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you guys for coming out. We're going to close down the podcast. Thank everybody for listening.
Thanks for having us.
And we'll see you next time.
Sweet. Thanks, Dave.
We out.